Good evening, Black America, and welcome yet again to another heartbreaking episode of You People. Because at this point, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to refer to you as my people before I finally just get to the breaking point, wash my hands of the whole thing, turn and walk in the other direction and just never look back. Because everything that I'm seeing from the Black community, as far as constantly making excuses for all of our negativity and negativity, I always thought that our best character, at least this is what I'm hearing in the interwebs, is that we separate ourselves from white society and the way that they do things so effectively that we've become the most honorable, upstanding, upright people on the face of God's green earth. Ha ha ha. Yes, I know it's a joke, but humor me. This is what you say. This is what I'm always hearing about all the greatness of black people and how great we are and how honorable and noble that we are and how any problem that we ever have is because of the white man. The oppressor, he's holding us down, or we're the victims of bigotry and racism, and we just have all these opportunities that are available to us just snatched away from us because we black. And so we always victims. We ain't never do nothing wrong, boss. We just going about our business, doing our own things, trying to be all good and noble and goody two shoes, and then just somebody comes with a cracker with a cracking of a whip and they just start beating on us and they just start taking things away from us and they won't let us get anything and the police are profiling us and we don't get jobs and you know what? I have said time and again, and I still say time and again, that there are some legitimate grievances as to how we in the African American community are always held in suspect, are always on somebody's list of some sort of mistreatment. You can thank Booker T. Washington for that, in large part. Now, for any of you pro-black power fist-pumping types who are offended by that, I'll explain someday why Booker T. Washington, while he did some great things for the black community, granted, but he was largely a detriment to the black cause and the advancement of black people, which is why it took us so long to get to where we are now. But unfortunately, even though it was piecemeal, it was still on the back of a struggle that tried to push us in the right direction, that tried to make us be seen and treated and respected as human freaking beings and citizens of this country. But for all that long struggle, and for all the sacrifices that had to be made in order to get us to this point to where opportunity is just right at our fingertips, to see how we so failed and so dropped the ball, and in doing so, continuously making excuses for why we are in our dejected state, why we can't advance, or why we refuse to advance is really more like it. It's always easier to point a finger at somebody else, blame a white man for our problems, even though historically, yes, they were primarily and predominantly the reason for our lack of advancement. But hey, we live in the 21st century, times changed, and times are still changing, because everything's still not right, and nobody's going to be foolish enough to say that they are. Well, actually, some people are foolish enough to say that, and they're totally blind to reality. But to take what we've got, and to build upon that, and to work with it, and to become truly people who are worthy of these white people to be shaking in their boots because they'll be fearful that we'll take over. Not as a gang of thugs, but somebody who actually play their own game on their own terms, on their own level playing field, and we'll beat them at their own game every which way that you look, just by doing it the honorable way and making it a real competition, so that, as the saying goes, may the better man win. But no, we'd much rather keep wallowing in this whole victimhood complex. Whoa, woe is me, oh, woe is us. We're always the target of this, that, and the other, and we're never gonna get ahead because we ain't doing nothing wrong to nobody. It's all, if anything's wrong in our community, it's because the white man this, the white man that, and you know what? I've been tired of hearing it. I was going to say I'm tired of hearing it, but I've been tired of hearing it. And one would have thought that with the outcome of this Michael Brown shenanigan, that eyes would finally wake up and realize it's like, look, we have to choose our heroes and choose our rallying cries and the poster children of whatever protest that we want to whip up on a moment's notice. We need to be more selective about who we choose and what we choose in order to present it on the social scene to say that these are our concerns, these are our struggles, these are what we're fighting against, and these are our representatives. But no, we live in an age now where we put a thug like Michael Brown on the same equitable level as, say, a Rosa Parks. How did we get to this? Somebody, please explain it to me. Now, why am I going off on a rant right now and doing so in such a way to where I'm trying my damnedest to maintain my composure? Well, I don't want to drop names, but she knows who she is. And, you know, to her credit, she tries to get me to look at things more clearly or more deeply, trying to put a different perspective on things. And, you know, that's honorable and noble. Except that if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to put into somebody's lap and say, hey, your point of view or your perspective is way off the mark, here are the things that you failed to see, or here are the areas that you didn't take into consideration, and you don't have anything to actually support that perspective or that counter argument, then all that tells me is that you're really not concerned about things like justice, equality, righteousness, all those other good platitudes. And it lets me know that you're all about being an agenda fraud. Because it always comes back to this whole victim complex. Woe is me, woe is us, we're the victims, and anything that we ever do wrong is either because it's somebody else's fault, or somebody misunderstood us, or somebody misinterpreted what our motivations were and all this other mess. And I'm like, why are we still on this? You want to holler and wallow and complain and whine and bitch and moan about how the white man and white people don't respect us? I'm right there with you. But you've got to give them the ammunition to disrespect us. Why? I mean, so many of you folks out there who claim to believe the Bible and claim that that's your guidebook and that you're good Christian soldiers and all this other good happy-doo-dah stuff. Well, what about reading in the New Testament, or the so-called New Testament, where it talks about that when you stop doing the bad things that you were once wallowing in, and you decide to live an upright, straightforward life in line with your new philosophy and your new philosophical outlook, that the blowback that you get from the people that you used to run around with, all the mistreatment, all the harassment, all the disrespect that you get from them, it's not because you're doing anything bad and you're doing anything wrong. It's because you refuse to do anything bad and do anything wrong anymore. You're trying to live an upright life. Now they don't know how to handle it. And so, boom, you become the object of their disrespect and their derision because you want something better for your lives. And all you glory hallelujah Christians out there, the same ones parading and promoting around this hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matters bullshit behind Michael Brown, y'all the first ones who don't try to see what we're trying to say about what we need to do to fix our community and to fix our image as we project it from our community. The white man would never disrespect you if you didn't disrespect one another so severely. And yes, I guarantee you that if we did set our course straight and we started to do good and we started to become a positive influence, that would bring out the worst in them also. Case in point, Barack Hussein Obama. Look at all the hatred and vitriol he gets for being nothing but a good, upright, honest, hardworking man who actually did something with his life and who's an inspiration to black people, or at least he should be. But see, you can't tolerate being disrespected because you try to respect yourselves. No, you got to just keep piling on fuel for the fire in order to make the people who are already disrespecting you keep disrespecting you and disrespecting you more, to the point where they're going to get tired of trying to deal with you and trying to placate you here and there every time you become a little squeaky wheel, and they'll just cut you off eventually. Oh, but I guess that's what you're looking forward to, because at least that way you can feel justified. See, we always do. Whitey's always out to get us. They ain't never gonna let us get nothing. Well, damn it, what do you expect? Every time they hold the door open for us, or they try to let us in a little bit, even against their own better judgment, or as they're feeling like, hey, you know, this isn't what I'm really feeling, but hey, it's the sign of the times. In order to keep up, we got to do this, whether we want to or not. Give them their little shot, give them their little opportunity here and there. You know, still try to shortchange them here and there occasionally, because we do get shortchanged. But damn it, take what they give you, work with it, put it to some positive use, and become an inspiration to anyone who's stuck in this quagmire that the African American community finds itself in, to give us the motivation to say, hey, they can do it, we can do it. We're going to pull ourselves out of it. It starts first and foremost with getting your act together. Or as we like to say in the community, we got to step correct. You hear what I'm saying? We don't do it by holding up thugs or thug wannabes. And at this point, screw that. I tried to give him a little bit of an out earlier in one of my earlier commentaries. I'm just going to lay it out there. Boy's a thug. I'm just going to call it, okay? Get ticked off with me as much as you want to. But, yeah, as they say, walks like a duck, flies like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck. And Michael Brown was a thug duck, okay? As far as I'm concerned. Because I didn't see him doing anything honorable. I didn't see him doing anything noble. I didn't see him doing anything correct. Despite the fact that somebody decided that they wanted to get in on me, again, just like they did with that whole Ray Rice thing, telling me how I wasn't paying attention to the video, how I was overlooking certain things. And I came back on and I was like, okay, you know, fair call. I'll admit I didn't look all that carefully at it the first time. Let me go re-review it and just see if maybe I missed something. And admittedly, there was one small element of that whole thing where, yes, I did actually miss a little something which clarified the picture. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it was like, look, the assessment was still correct. Even when you asked me to look at the one little element that supposedly changed the whole outcome or the whole rationale for the whole thing, it's like, no, my comment still stands. And I broke it down. And I said, yes, on the surface, it looks like such and such and so-and-so. But even if what you said happened, or even what appeared to happen actually did happen, even though I have my doubts, there's still the time prior to this couple coming within camera range of that elevator lobby that we didn't get to see or hear about. That led up to what took place at that time. And whoever the responsible party was, based upon everything that was seen by us in video, and that was explained by the so-called victim herself, clarified enough to say that she started it. Somehow, some kind of way, not to say that old boy didn't do something to get her riled up or anything, but at the end of the day, when the fit started to hit the shan, she was responsible for setting things in motion. So even though I was admonished for not paying close attention, the end result is the argument still stands, or my assessment, I should say. But here we go through this whole routine again, this time with this Michael Brown character. And again, it has to do with the video footage. Yeah, that same video footage where when Michael Brown's parents were asked whether or not they had seen the video of him robbing this liquor store, convenience store, whatever the heck it was, and the first word out of their mouth was, no, we didn't see the video. The incriminating video that would have shown, that had already shown the world, but would have reaffirmed to his parents, because I know they knew what he was. Come on, let's not play games here. His parents knew exactly what a hoodlum their son Michael Brown was, which is why they proclaimed that they didn't see the video, because they didn't want to see the video, because they knew it was incriminating. Now, yes, I'm speculating, granted. I'm putting on my interpretation of things that I can't say for sure what was in these people's minds or not, so you can hold that against me. But come on, let's be real. Conjecture aside, it makes logical, rational sense. These folks knew what a thug or a hoodlum or a wannabe that Big Mike was. And they just didn't want to be confronted with it after the whole world got confronted with it, so they can feign ignorance. And don't try to tell me that that's not what happened. Your heart of hearts knows that's what happened. So the video that the whole world saw, that I saw multiple times, but apparently I was being admonished again for not watching the video carefully again, that supposedly I was overlooking some details. In this instance, the detail I was overlooking was that he tried to pay for those cigarillos. What? He tried to pay for the cigarillos? First of all, I don't remember how old this guy was, but I do think that he was underage. So even if he was trying to buy them, First of all, you're underage, so you're not getting anything. That's the law. The shop owner had every right to say, no, I'm not going to sell these to you because you're underage. That is, if that were the case. But you saw the man put paper down on the counter like he was going to pay for it. Well, first of all, the person who put paper, as you said, on the counter was not Mike Brown. That's the first thing. And second of all, assuming, if that's the argument that you wanted to make, if the idea is, I'm assuming that she thought that they were putting money on the counter in order to pay for the cigarillos. But even if that were the case, which it wasn't, because there's no way that you can look at this video and walking away saying that they were trying to pay for these things. But let's just say, even if that were the case, as much imagination as that takes, let's just go with it for a second. And say, yeah, okay, that's what was happening. In order to pay for something, it has to be placed in front of you. Either you take it off of one of the racks in the back and you put it on the counter to get it barcode scanned, or however they register things up these days. Because I know if there are a few places that still do things old school with the sticker labels and all this mess, they don't have scanners. But either way, the product had to be placed on the counter or handed to the clerk in order for it to be rung up and or scanned. In the case of cigarillos, just like any tobacco product, they are a controlled substance. Legally available, don't ask me why, but they are a controlled substance. And so they are kept away from the public's grasp. If anybody wants a pack of cigarettes or a pack of cigars, they have to request of the clerk, I want a pack of Cool's Extra Menthol and a pack of Marlboro's Hard Carton, or whatever they say. I don't smoke, so I don't know the jargon and lingo all that well. But they have to ask for the product that's kept behind the counter. And in getting the product, the clerk has every right to ask for, what's that? If you're under 18, or if you look under 18, or some places 21, I don't know which. Like I said, I don't deal with it, so I don't know if it's 18 or 21 anymore. Not my Kuleana, so I don't know. But whichever it is, if you look suspiciously underage, a clerk will ask you, and they have every right to ask you, for identification to prove your age. I've had that thing done to me so daggone many times, asking me for identification. I'm like, what do you mean for identification? I'm damn near 30 already. And people still asking me for identification because they think I'm underage. Now, thankful, I mean, in some ways, it's a blessing to be thought of as looking younger than your years. But not when you're trying to make a purchase. That's when it kind of loses its novelty. Because you just want to go someplace, you want to grab something, you want to put it on the counter, and you just want to go ha'alele and say, hey, thank you, you have a good day. It becomes a hassle for somebody to ask for your ID because you just want to make a straightaway purchase. And that's the downside of looking younger than your years. So, it's a double-edged sword. So, in Michael Brown's case, if, again, we know it's bullshit, but let's just go with it and just say, if Michael Brown was actually trying to purchase cigarillos, he would have been asked for his identification, and if either he didn't have it available to show, or he was deemed not old enough to purchase the product, he would not have the product sold to him. Now let's say that that was his motivation for robbing the store. Clearly, he robbed it. And it wasn't a simple act of, well, the clerk just refused to take his money, so he just walked out with the cigarillos. That would have been one thing. It still would have been wrong, but that would have been one thing. But this nigger jumped over the counter and grabbed a box of the product and tried to saunter his way outside of the store. The clerk got in his way, as he had every right to do, because he's in business not to be shoplifted. And Big Mike, this so-called gentle giant, wanted to show just how gentle he was by intimidating and threatening physical harm to the clerk, to where the clerk had to go call the police saying, I was robbed by this big... If he used the N-word, I wouldn't have blamed him to describe what had happened. Because at that point, he earned the title. So that's the video I was supposed to watch again. and look for all these little telltale signs about how he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just trying to make a purchase, and he wasn't being allowed to make his purchase. And so the clerk was bad, and the police officer who stopped him when he had a box of stolen cigarillos in his pocket was bad, because he shouldn't have stopped him for walking in the sidewalk. That was bad. And he shouldn't have been a white police officer stopping a Negro in the street in the first place, because that's bad. And he shouldn't have gotten shot by the police officer because he decided to get physically violent with the police officer, because that's bad. Anytime a big burly nigger decides that he wants to beat up on some white cracker police officer by default, just because he's white and he's a police officer, he should just let himself get beat up by some big burly nigger. And the fact that he didn't want to get beat up by this big burly nigger, well, that's bad. And that he shoots this big burly nigger who's getting violent with him and charging at him, threatening the police officer's life, that's bad. He should have just let himself get charged and beaten to half to death or whatever, and just let this big burly nigger thief thug just go on about his business, and just been a good little old white boy cracker in a police uniform, and just brushed that off and aside and said, okay, no harm done. Thank you for your time, Mr. Black Man. Sorry to have bothered you. The F out of here. You expect me... I said I was going to try to maintain my composure, but how can you expect me to maintain my composure when all I ever see from my scratch that, you people? Because as I said, I'm at the point now, I'm tired of claiming you. I'm tired of identifying with you. When each and everything that I see coming out of, I almost said it again, out of this community, damn my community, you know who my community is? It looks back at me when I look in the mirror every morning. As far as I'm concerned, that's my black community right there. Because the rest of it, as y'all say, you ain't representing. You don't represent anything that I stand for, or that I hold dear, or that I hold important. Few of you do. Unfortunately, we're the minority. Yeah, the true minority. If anybody wants to throw that label at us, yeah, there's the minority right there. If you want to call African Americans a minority, that's your minority right there. Upright, upstanding people who try to do things to be respectful and to try to be a positive role model for the community. Yeah. Okay, so you want to talk minorities? There you go. But I'm just so sick of this attitude that these thugs and these hoodlums are supposed to represent what the black community is all about, and that the let me say it your way, the police are just supposed to turn a blind eye, or to just shrug a shoulder and just like, oh, that's just the way they do things. We've got no right to interfere in the way they do things, or the way they live their lives. The hell you think I'm paying taxes for? That's to clean up what? Here I am trying not to say it. But I pay taxes for the police to clean up, quote unquote, my community. Because I don't want to live around a bunch of thugs and hoodlums and always watching my heartbeat and wondering, hey, if one of these characters might just on a whim decide they want to pull a knife out on me, or just bop me in the head and try to steal my wallet, which doesn't have any money in it anyway, but it won't stop them from doing it anyway, even if I'm protesting, hey dude, I ain't carrying no cash on me. That won't stop them. And do I want to live in a community like that? Hell to the effing no. So I have the convenience of 911 to where I can call dispatcher and say, hey, send one of those police officers, which my tax dollars are paying for, to come in and get this riffraff off of me, or from around me, or out of my neighborhood. Nope. That makes me a sellout, wanting the police to clean up my neighborhood. And when the police actually do their job to actually clean up my neighborhood, as long as they're doing it right and within reason, of course, not overstepping their bounds, because yes, the police can overstep their bounds and they can abuse their authority. That's one of the problems we have. It's not just the black community, but it more readily affects our community, yes. But police sometimes have a habit of overstepping their bounds and abusing their authority. But see, that's where the beauty of the legal system comes in, where we can take them to court, or we can hire attorneys and saying our rights were abused. And we're going to file a complaint against this officer or this group of officers, and we're going to take the city to court, and we're going to sue them for some ducats. Simply because our rights were violated by the police force, which my tax dollars is supposed to be paying for them to serve and protect me. not to harass me and to threaten and intimidate me. See, that's how white folk, well, the more intelligent white folks anyway, that's how they do it. But we as black folk, by and large, nope, it's always got to be attitude, attitude, attitude. Then we get a baton slammed across our heads. Then we want to scream and holler police brutality. You know, there are just as many poor, uneducated, or sub-educated white cracker trash out there getting their heads bashed in with police batons as much as we getting ours. But why is that happening? For the same reason. They decide they want to cop an attitude, and okay, so what's the police officer's response? Okay, boom, boot to the head. So, as I said, overall, you look at the more respectable elements of the white community, how they handle it, and it's as much of an inconvenience to them as it is to anybody else. But with them, it's, yes, officer, yes, sir. Police officer, put your hands up. Okay, my hands are up. Hey, I'm free to clear. Step out of the vehicle. I'm stepping out of clear. Down on your knees, whatever. Or show me your identification. Do you have any outstanding warrants on you? Blah, 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 blah. And it's frustrating to them, too. But they go through the motions. Why? Because they know if they cop an attitude with the police, like us Negroes, or like the poor white trash version of themselves, they know they're going to get treated the exact same way that the poor white trash variety of themselves and that Negroes in general are going to get treated with, because you cop an attitude with the police, get a cop's baton wrapped upside your head. It's that simple. So here's this Michael Brown thug. First thing he has to do is start copping an attitude. Officer didn't even start to put the pieces of the puzzle that this guy was responsible for the convenience store robbery until Big Mike and his friend, Scrawny, whatever his name was, decided they want to cop an attitude with the police. Hey man, we in our streets and we're just far from our house and we ain't just far from our house and we ain't gonna get off the street and we ain't gonna get up to the sidewalk. Oops. You just told the police you ain't gonna obey the law. Because you do know it's against the law to walk in the middle of the street, don't you? Especially when there are sidewalks provided. And see, this is how a lot of these thugs and a lot of these criminals and people with warrants and all this other mess, this is a lot of what gets them busted. Because they're doing one little simple thing that they're not supposed to be doing. And in most cases, police officers are just coming up and saying something simple like, oh, your tags are suspended, or you know, you're out of registration, or you know, you're riding a bicycle in opposing opposite traffic. No, the law says you ride your bicycle along with the flow of traffic. I just wanted to stop you and just explain that to you, get you on your way. But no, people got to run, or they try to throw an attitude. It's like, what I do wrong? I ain't do nothing wrong, or I'm just a block away from my house and everything. Police got every right to say, okay, you're acting suspicious. You got any warrants on you? You know, what's the deal with you? Who are you? Show me some identification. Are you carrying any weapons? Do I have permission to search your person? Do I have permission to search your vehicle? Whatever. And that's when the fit hits the shan. All because a police officer decided he wanted to stop and say, hey, could you move it off the road? That's usually what it's about. I'm telling you, I have been stopped by police. I can't even remember how many times. Close to a dozen at least in my lifetime. That I have police officers actually stop me, ask me for my identification, ask me where I was going, or explain to me that, hey, you made a dangerous lane change, or your driving habits looked a little suspicious. What's going on? What's the situation? Just relatively recently, about a couple of years ago, I had police officers pull me over, wondering why I was riding erratically. I'd drive a little ways, I'd stop, I'd get off the bike, roam around, get back on the bike repeatedly until I stopped in what they said was an intersection. Of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, intersection, that means connecting four-way traffic. Well, no, in their mind, it means anything that connects to the main road that you're on, and the road goes only in one direction. That way, it doesn't cut through on this side. So even though there was no continuation of the road where you stopped at, you were still stopped at an intersection. And that's when we decided, hey, what's up with you? You're driving in a not safe manner. What's the story? And then I explained to him, hey, I wasn't trying to cause any problems. I was trying to make sure I was driving carefully, stayed all the way to the right hand of the road and whatnot. And I'm doing all these erratic stops because my girlfriend came home and she explained to me that from the time that she left the drugstore and walked back to the house, she had somehow lost or misplaced her birth control. And I'm just trying to retrace what I think her steps were. And I'm just trying to see if I can find them out on the roadside or some mess of that sort. And explain the situation to him, ask me for my identification, showed him, my IDs, like, oops, I made a mistake. That's my license from back home. That's not valid anymore. Here, let me show you the updated license and whatnot.
And then we got into a discussion about, hey, why'd you leave Hawaii? What are you doing over in this area? And it's typically the same conversation I have with anybody. As soon as I tell them I'm from Hawaii, first question out of their mouth is, why'd you leave Hawaii? What are you doing? Why'd you come here? And that's the same kind of conversation we had. And, and like I said, we just had, chit chat. They ran my name and all this other good stuff like police do. And again, as I say, hey, everything checks out. We just want to let you know that, the way that you're riding your motorcycle and whatnot, we thought it was cause for concern and it's a safety issue, whatnot. So just be mindful of that. And like I said, for every time that I've ever been stopped by the police or confronted by the police, even had to have a court appearance at one point. One of my earlier involvements with the police where it didn't involve anything where I was actually doing something wrong. Because yes, I've had those experiences and those encounters as well. But again, I always found myself getting treated with the utmost respect, with perhaps the one exception, because I won't go into it, but let's just say that if that police officer had decided that he wanted to rough me up, he would have had every right, and given the fact that there was no eyewitness around, he could have done it and nobody would have been the wiser. But even then, I found myself getting treated with respect. So overall, I've always had a certain amount of respect for the police and the job that they do. And even when I was doing wrong, I would express that I would have that kind of respect for them. Because that's their position, that's the job that they're paid to do. And part of their job is to keep things in order. And if somebody's being disorderly, like I was occasionally when I had to deal with them on that level, but also when it's like, well, hey, there's a safety issue involved, or you have to be concerned about potential hazards that you might be posing. There was that also. And then there were just other times where they would just stop me and they would just ask me for my identification. Didn't have to tell me why, because I could pretty much figure out why. Hey, they're looking for somebody. They think maybe I might match the description, or somebody's walking around suspicious and they're just, stopping people, like they do with those random intoxication DUI stops, whatever. It's not like they're picking on anybody, but they just want to try to curtail DUI. News story that I just a couple of weeks back that they were doing back in Honolulu. People getting all upset. Oh, police are entrapping us. They're causing entrapment because the law says that if anybody's in a crosswalk, we're supposed to stop our vehicles. But they didn't look like they were in the crosswalk. Well, what do you think it means when somebody steps out into the road, into the crosswalk, and starts walking across it, and you're still zooming past? And then they radio in, it's like, okay, we got another one, stop the red, whatever the car just passed by, and give them a citation also. And the reason they even felt they needed to do that is because there were too many complaints coming from especially the elderly citizens saying, we're not being permitted to cross in the crosswalk on this busy road of traffic. We're old, we're frail, we walk slowly, we're expecting the drivers to do the right thing, and they're not yielding to us. So, hey, can we get the police to come down, look at this thing, and check it out, and maybe do something to possibly correct the situation? That's what police do. And we should respect them for the job that they do. And in fact, if we were more respectful of the police and the job that they do, I guarantee you'd see a far, far fewer instances of so-called police brutality or police doing things in such a way to where their actions are questionable, such as shooting at Amadou Diallo 41 times. That was a tragic error on their part, to shoot at somebody 41 times. Oh, and let's talk about that shooting while we're at it. Because the Amadou Diallo shooting kind of helps explain or give some insight into why and how Michael Brown was shot and gunned down dead. Because there are all these misconceptions and all these fairy tale ideas that somehow Michael Brown could have been taken out without him having been killed. Maybe or maybe not, but there are some basic things you have to understand about police procedure when it comes to them firing their weapons. Everybody going along talking about, well, he shouldn't have shot him, he could have incapacitated him, he didn't have to kill him. Just a couple of weekends ago, I got into a tense disagreement with Colonel of Wisdom about this very issue, about how police officers are overusing their, are just trigger-happy goons who are just going around and just pow, 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 just shooting people just for the sake of the fun of it. That this whole concept, this whole idea that we get from watching TV and movies is that police officers can just, with pinpoint precision, just pop somebody in the leg or pop somebody in the shoulder or pop somebody in the kneecap and just incapacitate somebody and not do any real damage to anybody. Sorry, kiddies, that's only in the movies. And that's only on TV. what you need to be getting your heads out of, for the most part, turn off the damn remote control clicker and go read a book, preferably a history book. And I explained, look, police officers are not trained to hit anything with pinpoint accuracy because they know that once they're out in the field and they're in a stressful situation like that, no matter how well trained they are, that adrenaline is going to kick in and they're going to lose any degree of control and composure that you might think that they should have, that they might actually have if they're on the firing range. But in a real life situation like that, when you're up against odds of not knowing who anybody is, not knowing what their intent is, not knowing what they might have on them that might be a threat to you, adrenaline is going to kick in and instincts are going to take over, which is why police are trained to aim for the greatest body area or the largest mass on a given body area. So when Amadou Diallo got shot at 41 times, notice the wording, shot at. Less than half of those shots actually made contact with him. Less than half. Oh, police are such bad shots, they had to shoot him 41 times. Well, listen, if the police were as good shots as everybody keeps trying to pretend that they are, every single one of those 41 shots would have hit Amadou Diallo. Hello? So y'all really need to come to reality and realize what police are capable of and what they're not capable of, but even more so, what their genuine authority is and what their authority is not, and upon recognizing and understanding those authorities and whatever limitations that go along with them, what your responsibility is in order to make sure that they don't do anything that steps outside the pale of what is routinely approved procedure for them. So it works both ways. You gotta give a little too. But that speaks of two things. That speaks, number one, of the fact that Amadou Diallo should have just said, oh, police are telling me to come out of the shadows, put my hands up, and don't do anything to make any kind of threatening move, or anything that can be interpreted as a threatening move. So let me just go ahead and comply. This is a misunderstanding, and just get it all taken care of. But by reaching for a cell phone, you're making it seem like you're reaching for a weapon, and police are already stressed out because they have to deal with people drawing weapons on them or getting physically violent with them all the time. I mean, that is a thankless job. And to think that I wanted to apply for it one time in my life, I must have been out of my stinking mind.
You done lost your motherfucking mind. You must have lost your mind. You must have just lost your mind. You must have just lost your mind.
But that is a thankless job. And so one of the things that I can do and that any of us can do to make their job less stressful is to not give them any reason to feel stressed. You know, a little bit of cooperation with the police officers go a long way. But can't tell Negroes that. Unless we need the police, and then it's like, where the police? Where the police? We're being threatened, we're being terrorized, and we call the police, and police never come by, and they never patrol our neighborhoods, and you don't give them any reason to. Because anytime they come to your neighborhood, they don't know what the heck they got to deal with anymore. Because they're always on edge. But it's the job they get paid for, so they got to do the job. But, you know, don't be surprised that they're going to feel a little paranoid and on edge because of what they got to deal with, because of what they constantly deal with. And it's the same situation with this Michael Brown thing. That thing could have went down completely. I mean, anybody cares about the life of that thug at all. He could have gotten away probably scot-free. Because all Officer Wilson was trying to do was tell him, get out of the middle of the street. And he was patrolling the area too, so he might have been looking for the robbery suspect at the same time too. We don't really know for sure. That story gets kind of hazy. But regardless, the only thing Michael Wilson was trying to do, Darren Wilson, I'm sorry, all he was trying to do was just tell these two Negro boys, get out of the middle of the street. That's all. And you know what they could have done? They could have just said to them in a huff under their breath, oh, fuck the police, man. But they could have just moved their way off to the edge of the sidewalk, complied with the officer, let the police officer go on about his business, and as soon as the police officer was out of sight, they could have ended up walking right back in the middle of the street like they were. And nobody would have bothered them, nobody would have gotten shot and killed, nothing. But see, that requires brain work. See, that requires wisdom. That requires logic. That requires thinking outside the box, see? Now no. Can't be a Negro and do anything like think creatively. To where, okay, you can deal with a little bit of humiliation for a little while, And then when the situation's cleared itself over and you can go do your own thing again, they could have just went right the heck back, walking in the middle of the street. They could have gotten hit by God knows who and who cared. But they decided that, nah, that requires too much effort on my part. That requires that I have to show respect for the law, you know. So, no, I ain't gonna abide by this white policeman trying to tell me, a black man in my own hood, that I need to abide by his white man law. Sure, cracker, F you. Oops, what'd you do that for? So now we got a situation. And now Officer Wilson's starting to put some pieces together and saying, I think I might have the suspect of that convenience store robbery. And then tries to approach him again, tries to pull up to him. And supposedly, according to the 24 witnesses that I was being lambasted for ignoring their testimony. Oh, what credible witnesses are you talking about? There were hundreds of witnesses out there that said that the police officer shot him. He had his hands up, and that he was beating up on a yeah, you know. So out of 24 witnesses who claimed that Michael Brown was being put in a chokehold by Officer Darren Wilson, get this now, from inside his vehicle. I want that to sink in, because if anybody knows anything at all about police procedure and police training, knows good dog damn well that ain't no police officers going to reach outside of his window, especially trying to grab somebody by the throat, and then try to pull them inside of the vehicle. That does not happen, ever. Procedure is that if you're going to have to detain someone or restrain someone, the police officer is going to step outside of the vehicle, because he knows that if he stays in the vehicle, number one, the suspect's going to have a better chance to run away, or the suspect's going to have a better chance to get physically violent with the police officer and put the police officer at a disadvantage. Which is exactly what Michael Brown did when he decided to get physically violent with Officer Darren Wilson. And in doing so, get a couple of caps popped in his ass in the process. Oh, he shot him while he was running away. Really? So explain then how it was that the shell casings were right next to the vehicle, right at the window, where it was reported that, yes, Michael Brown was seen inside the vehicle. And of course, everybody wants to say, well, it's because he was in a chokehold and Michael Brown was trying to fight him off. Or as the reliable witnesses say, that Michael Brown was reaching inside the vehicle and physically assaulting the police officer, which Darren Wilson himself said was what was happening, which helps to explain why Michael Brown's life juice was found inside Officer Darren Wilson's vehicle and on Officer Darren Wilson's clothing. Oops. But then the hundreds of witnesses or the scores of witnesses or however many this person told me that there were, I have to go back and look at the message. But I don't care how many she thought there were. The whole aftermath of the thing was recorded on somebody's cell phone where they had the whole scene taped off, and there's Michael Brown's dirt-napping body. That sounds awfully callous of me. But to let it be said, I don't feel any sympathy for that thug taking a dirt nap right there on that black tar pavement. Because in essence, he was asking for it. Yeah, I said it. So you got all these so-called witnesses as to what happened at the taped off scene. All these people gathering around didn't see the first thing that happened. But what do you hear everybody saying on this video they shot? Oh, they shot the brother for nothing. Oh, the police, they just shot our brother for nothing. They shot him for nothing. They shot him for nothing. They shot him for nothing. Everybody say they shot him for nothing. Well, you know what? Just because everybody in that video, after the fact, are saying the same thing, talking about how the police shot this black brother for nothing, does not change the fact that the police did not shoot him for nothing. He got shot for something. And that something was being physically violent and physically threatening and intimidating to an officer of the law. So all the witnesses, he had his hands up, he had his hands up, he was being put that chokehold. All these supposedly reliable witnesses now, according to the person who keeps telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I got my head so far up my ass that I can't put logical pieces of a puzzle together, that eyewitness testimony or that forensic evidence is it's like trying to speak facts to conservative Republicans. So here's all this mess now. All these witnesses talking about how Big Mike was just gunned down for nothing. He had his hands up. He was the victim. Strange how it is, though, that for those 24 plus witnesses, supposedly eyewitnesses or whatever kind of witnesses that they think they are, isn't it interesting that their testimony completely falls apart based upon the physical evidence? Well, that's the police. The police, they made up stories, and they set things up, and they planted stuff, and they changed things around, and they moved stuff around, and so they wanted to make it look like it. And why did they wait 2 hours before they said that? See, this is all a setup. They didn't really try to. They're trying to get an innocent black man to cover over that a guilty white police officer killed an unarmed black man, and they're just trying to cover their ass, and so they're making up stories. And all that because you had something like 24 or more so-called witnesses tell the same lie or different variations of the same lie that did not match up with the physical evidence, which did not match up with the forensic evidence, and did not match up with the actual credible eyewitness accounts of 8 individuals, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 individual eyewitnesses whose testimony actually backs up and verifies Officer Darren Wilson's version of the events as they took place, and it matches up with the physical evidence of the crime scene, and it matches up with the forensic evidence. Gee, how did that happen? Oh, because these so-called credible eyewitnesses, they're just a bunch of white trash hicks that were, no, you can't get off trying to pull that one either, because guess what? These 8 eyewitnesses that were deemed credible, whose stories matched up with Officer Wilson's testimony and his version of events and the physical and forensic evidence, these 8 witnesses, these 8 credible eyewitnesses, guess what, Boopy? They were all African American. And you know what else? Each of these same 8 credible eyewitnesses who supported Officer Wilson's testimony and who supported the physical and forensic evidence relating to the case, these 8 African American credible witnesses practically begged to remain anonymous. They did not want their identities revealed. Why not? I mean, if they're such credible witnesses, why wouldn't they want themselves to be identified as credible eyewitnesses to the events? Oh, I don't know. Maybe that whole stop snitching mentality of the African American community and the hood. Think maybe that might have had just a little smidgen to play in their decision not to want their identities known, just so that they could escape any kind of threatening ramifications that might come their way. Does that sound even the remotest bit possibly logical? But no. You want to promote a big, brutish, intimidating thug wannabe. You want to hold him up to the spotlight. You want to put him on the pedestal. And you want to promote him and wave him around as your poster child for the mistreatment of blacks and in the black community. That's your idea of a social symbol. That's your idea of a hero and an icon of the African American community. That's your poster child and your representative of the African American struggle against police brutality. Where was this outrage that you whip up behind a character, a despicable thug like Michael Brown? Where was that same outrage when police in Miami Springs, Florida, correction, Miami Gardens, Florida, were for years relentlessly harassing and falsely charging a mentally ill young black man who was just trying to take care of himself, working a job, constantly being harassed at his job, arrested from his job, even taken out and booked on trumped up charges from a room that was set up for him in the back of the store where he was living. I heard not a peep from anyone rallying, talking about police need to reel themselves in. Police need to stop abusing their authority. That this is another example of how the police disrespect members of the African American community. Why didn't you use him as your poster child? Because if there ever was one, he was it.
But no, you won't rally behind somebody like that. You won't take up a legitimate cause which expresses legitimate concerns, because that takes too much work. That takes too much effort. That means you can't show out as a bunch of niggers. That means that you can't get all filled with fake and phony indignation. That doesn't give you an excuse to act like a bunch of hoodlums and a bunch of thugs and a bunch of uncaged savages and destroy your communities as your excuse to vandalize, to rob, to loot, to threaten and intimidate. Because thugs like Michael Brown make it easy for you to show out as the niggers you are. And that's right, I did say that, and I dare you to get upset and throw your fits of temper tantrum at me. But I said it, and I will say it again. People and situations like this, where you take on this phony vest of concern for your community, these fake wars that you keep waging against the police or against the man and all this other mess, they give you the convenient excuse to act out like the niggers that you are. And the only reason I even have to say anything like that is because it's true. And the only reason that it's true is because you make it true. When you play the part, you get to wear the label. Point blank. Don't want me to call you out on it? Then stop playing and acting the role. And I'll be the first one to shut up. But as long as you keep playing the game, you get to wear the name. I am tired. I am furious that so many of you mofos out there just don't get a clue and could actually care less that the greater African American community, the decent, responsible members of the African American community, have to suffer due to your outrageous behavior. And that includes your propping up these false idols and these undeserving heroes. It used to be that heroes who represented the spirit of protest used to be names like Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, W.E.B. Du Bois. No. Now our idea of a hero as a role model, as a representative of the African American struggle and the African American protest against mistreatment by a white racist society, is a brutish, violent, intimidating thug. These are our heroes now. This is now what represents the symbol of mistreatment of African Americans in the United States. And you want to know, and you constantly wonder, why I call you, you people, and why I'm constantly lamenting that I feel I have next to no choice but to walk away, wash my hands, and just completely divest myself of the so-called black community. If you have to ask any more,
after this, then there is no hope for you. And I truly am done. Because to continue down this path is only to let me know that there is no salvation for you, and that we are already past the point of ruin, and that this time the damage just may be utterly irreparable. I hope not, but as I've been saying these past several commentaries, I'm not holding my breath. End of line.